Good morning, everyone. We'll get started with today's class. So in last class, we started discussing about how to generate references, especially when we talked about, how to generate a reference current or a reference voltage. Now, we looked at what is called as constant GM biasing and how that is to be done. And we saw that, like, if you can keep the resistor independent of process and temperature variation, you basically get a biasing which will give you a constant GM no matter what the process variation is, temperature variation is. Right? Now, then we also started looking at a zero temperature coefficient reference, basically, and we saw that that is actually a band gap reference voltage. And then we were looking at the process by which we can generate that. And in order to generate a zero temperature coefficient, because all the elements that we have some kind of a temperature dependence. So the idea we came up with was basically to take a negative temperature coefficient voltage and another voltage with a positive temperature coefficient and add them up suitably such that we are able to generate generate a zero temperature coefficient voltage. So we were in the process of thinking how to do that, right? So now, excuse me. So if you take, so basically our necessity was like Vref was supposed to be VBE1 plus Vt natural logarithm of n, some alpha 2 times natural logarithm of n. This is what we actually wanted to have. Now, the way that we can achieve it, so let us go step by step. So let us say that we have a current source of I, which is being pumped into, let us say, a diode. Let's call this as Q1. This is VBE1, okay? And we also have the same current I being pumped into another transistor. But the difference between Q1 and Q2 is that if the area of this BJT is A, the area of this BJT is N times A. Now, similar to how we talk about W by L ratios of MOSFETs, in BJTs, when you talk about, of course, all of us have studied the discrete BJT devices. So there you don't have any control, right? It's just one device. But when you do an integrated circuit using BJTs, right? Like how you have control over the W by L ratio or the W and the L of a MOSFET, in the case of a bipolar design, what you have is you have control over the emitter area. Okay, so the emitter area is going to decide how much. I mean, basically, it is going to decide your parameters. Okay, now how is the BJT basically implemented? It is more easy to implement a PNP transistor in a CMOS technology. So the way it is done is that you have a P minus substrate, right? And then you have an N well. And then here you have a P plus diffusion, which becomes your emitter. So this is your emitter, and then this is your N well. So you have a N plus contact, which gives you the base. So basically, this is your emitter. Oops. Let's say this is your emitter, this is your base, and this is your collector. So basically, you put a P plus diffusion, and then you take the contact for a collector. So you have a PNP transistor, which can be easily formed in this way. Okay. So similarly, there are other ways to form the NPN transistor. And what is of interest is basically what is your emitter area. Okay. So this P plus diffusion, right? This is the cross-sectional view. If you look at the top view, what is the area of your emitter is what is going to determine the parameters of that particular BJT, right? So here what we have taken is that Q1 is having an area of, let us say, A, Q2 has an area of N times A, okay? Now what that would actually mean in realization is that you have N times N number of transistors connected in parallel, all right? So that is what it means. Now, if you look at this, let us call this as V01 or VO1, and this is VO2, this voltage here, and sorry, you have a resistor. This is Q2, this is some resistor R, which is having, this is Q2 is having n times the area, and then you have some VBE2. Now, obviously, when you are pumping the same current into two transistors with different area, the one with the larger area will require a smaller VB. Okay. Now, if you look at this one, and then if we somehow force VO1 to be equal to VO2. So we will see how to do this, how to force those two voltages to be the same. That we will take care of it a little later. But suppose by some mechanism, we are taking these two voltages, VO1 and VO2, and make them both equal. Then what is happening here? VBE1 becomes equal to VBE2 plus I times R. Correct. VO1 is VBE1, VO2 is IR plus VBE2. So what happens to this IR here? IR is nothing but VBE1 minus VBE2. Now this is nothing but delta VBE. In yesterday's class, we had already seen what is delta VB, right? So here you can, if you assume both the, you can basically write this to be what? This is nothing but VB1 can be written as what? Vt natural logarithm of I divided by Is minus Vt natural logarithm of I divided by n times Is, because it's a larger transistor. Now what will you get as you do this? You'll basically get Vt natural logarithm of n, right? So the voltage across the, if you take these two arms, one arm having, one branch having only Q1 and another branch having Q2 and a resistor in series, where the area of Q2 is n times that of Q1. And if you force those two voltages to be equal through some mechanism, the voltage across the resistor, this resistor, turns out to be Vt ln n. Now, what is the behavior of this voltage, or for that matter, what is the behavior of this voltage here with respect to temperature? What is it? It's proportional to absolute temperature. This is a Ptat voltage, or in other words, if you were to do that, the current will end up having a Ptat behavior. Okay. So now, if we do this, then what is happening to this VO2? So VO2 can be written as what? VBE2 plus this Vt natural logarithm of n. All right. So what are we having? Basically, we wanted this Vref to be a combination of a VBE and this delta VBE. Now, if you take an arrangement like this and you force VO1 and VO2 to be somehow equal, then what we are ending up is that this VO2 is basically going to be a zero temperature coefficient thing if you can choose this ln n to be an appropriate value. So in other words, if you kind of substitute things, it turns out this ln n, because what did we see in yesterday's class? We saw that alpha 2 times ln n should be equal to 17.2. Here there is no alpha 2, it is directly ln n. So if this is equal to 17.2, it turns out that this n turns out to be an extremely large value, 2.95 into 10 to the power of 7. Okay, which basically means that, you need to have, if this is area of A, the area of this Q2 transistor has to be some 29.5 million times that of this one, which is impractical. Basically, this is impractical, right? But now we have found a solution, but then there are a few things that need to be tackled. What are the problems that we see here? First and foremost, we need a mechanism to make VO1 equal to VO2. Okay, we just said if both are equal, this is what we are getting, and VO2 becomes our band gap reference. But we need to come up with a mechanism how to do it. Now, secondly, the second problem is ln n is equal to 17.2 is impractical. Right? So we need to do some scaling is needed. We cannot have such a large n factor. Now, thirdly, there is also another thing. If V02 is equal to V01 and this V01 is VBE1, now VBE by itself is a CTAT voltage. How can V02 be temperature independent? So we need some kind of a mechanism to change even the current. Now, to address all these three things, let us come up with a very simple solution. Okay. Now, let us look at the problem like this, right? We have a diode or one BJT. This is VBE1. This is Q1 with an area of A. We have one more branch, which is it's a diode connector transistor with an area of some N times A. Now, what is our need here? We need to make this X and this Y the same, right? Now, how do we do it typically? When we want to make something the same, what do we do? Now, typically you put an op amp with some negative feedback, and we know that when you have an op amp with a sufficiently large gain and you put something in negative feedback, then there is virtual short between the two input terminals of your op amp. In other words, the op amp will drive things in such a way that your the two input terminals become equal. So that is exactly what we are going to do here. Okay, so we are going to take an op amp, okay, and we are going to connect this and this as the two input terminals of your op amp. And then what we are going to do is this is going to control these two voltages, and therefore what we are going to do is our first cut solution is basically to say I'm going to put two resistors R1 and R2, and these two resistors are controlled by this op amp. Okay. Now what is important here is to make sure, so let us say this is R3, let us say. Okay. Now what is important here is to make sure that this feedback loop is basically working as a negative feedback loop, right? That is to say that this op amp is, you have connected this op amp with a certain polarity such that it is basically going to correct it in the way in which you want it to correct, right? That is, it has to converge. It should not go and it should not be a positive feedback loop. Now, how do you do that? How do you ensure that? So let us, it's a little tricky to work out this feedback loop. Now, let us just say that this Y node increases with temperature. As temperature drifts, let us say this Y node increases. Okay. Now, if your Y node increases, you need to basically bring, So let us say this Y node is increasing. Okay. Now, what should happen? Your op amp, the output of the op amp is connected to this resistor, and that is only going to decide the current that is going to flow into your system, right? So which means that if Y node increases, your output node must go down so that it restores this voltage, right? So which means that this is in the inverting polarity and this is your non-inverting polarity, all right? So if you take, this is going to be the way that you do, and this output voltage that you get here between this and ground, this becomes your band gap voltage. Now, how is this going to be a band gap voltage? So let us work it out. Let us see whether we are solving all the problems. Okay. So what is V out? V out can be written as VB2 plus. We know that because we are put it in feedback loop, this node X and node Y are going to be equal, and therefore if both are equal,
we also know that the voltage across this VT R3 is what? VT natural logarithm of N, right? That is what we saw in this analysis, that if you make these two voltages the same, the voltage across the resistor is going to be VT ln of N, right? And therefore, this voltage is going to be VT ln of N. Okay. And basically what we need is this voltage. What is V out? V out is nothing but the drop across R2 plus the drop across R3 plus VBE2. Okay. What is the current that is flowing through this? So we know the voltage across R3. So the current that is flowing through this branch is VT ln N divided by R3. Right. Now this multiplied by R2 plus R3 is the total voltage across this, and this is your V out. Okay. Is it clear? So V out is nothing but the voltage across R2, the voltage across R3 plus VBE2. Right? Now, what is the current that is flowing through this branch? We already know that if you make X and Y equal, the voltage across R3 is VT ln N. So the current flowing through this branch is nothing but VT ln N by R3, and multiplied by R2 plus R3 is the total voltage that you get here. So in other words, you can write this V out to be equal to VBE2 plus Vt ln N multiplied by 1 plus R2 by R3. Now, what was our first problem? We needed a mechanism to make V01 equal to V02. That we have found out a mechanism which is basically put a feedback loop, negative feedback loop with an op amp around it, right? And this op amp is going to make sure that these two nodes X and Y are going to be equal. So the first problem is solved. Now the second problem is you have this very large value of N that is required to make this voltage as a zero temperature coefficient voltage. Right. Now let us see whether that problem has been solved. Okay. Now what is required here? In yesterday's class we saw that alpha 2 times, whatever is the coefficient of this can be written as T into K by Q ln N 1 plus R2 by R3. And we saw that, the coefficient, this coefficient should be equal to 17.2, right? So ln of N multiplied by 1 plus R2 by R3 should be equal to 17.2. This is what we derived in yesterday's class, right? Now, if you take, let us say R2 by R3 to be, let's say a factor of 4, right? Then what happens? Ln of N becomes 17.2 divided by 5, and this turns out to be that N is equal to approximately 31. Now this is much more realizable, right? Earlier we had an N which was running into 2.95 into 10 to the power of 7, but just by using this kind of an arrangement, we have reduced that N to a much more practical value, which is somewhere around 31. Now you can also go ahead and change this R2 by R3 ratio and get even a lower N or slightly higher N. Okay, so the second problem is also taken care of. Now, not only is the second problem taken care of, the third problem also is automatically taken care of, because this, although the VBE by itself will be a CTAT voltage, the current that is flowing through R1 and R2 is basically, it is automatically taken care of because the PTAT voltage across, we are not trying to make this VBE1 temperature independent. Basically, what we are doing is we are making sure that this combination is becoming equal to a zero temperature coefficient voltage. Okay. Now, this is a very elementary solution. Okay. So this is basically, in most topologies, you do not end up using this particular solution, but this is a starting point for us to understand. Okay. Now there are quite a few variations, quite a few things that happen. Now already, although we say that this, here what, first of all, there are some problems. First of all, what happens is there is what is called as a collector current variation. Okay. Now, as you, so if you Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Suddenly I had some disruption. So yeah. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, can you explain that negative feedback again?
Okay. So the negative feedback, basically it is like this. So suppose this node voltage Y is going to increase with temperature. Okay. Now what should your op amp basically do? The op amp should work in such a way that this node voltage Y comes down, right? Because we want the sum of this voltage across R3 and the VBE2 to be equal to, I mean, it should be constant, right? So basically what will happen, what should your op amp basically do? In order to reduce this voltage, it needs to go down, right? So therefore, this will be your inverting terminal and the other one will be your non-inverting terminal.
Okay, sir. Also, but it is also connected to that positive terminal, like through R1. So won't it affect that also?
Yeah, I mean, if this is coming down, basically you're reducing the current in both the things.
Okay, sir.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So typically what will happen is that when you do this, I mean, although this circuit looks quite elegant, there are certain, things that are there. One is, of course, we assumed that, we are starting off with a constant current, but here what happens is that as your temperature changes, this op amp is going to drive it in such a way that it is not going to be constant current, and therefore this slope that we talked about, right? The slope of minus 1.5 millivolt per Kelvin, this is actually for a constant current, right? Now that your collector current is going to change, the slope is not exactly going to be equal to that. Okay, so it is difficult to predict with the equations, but which is why we do simulations where the more complicated temperature models can be. So in practice, what happens is the temperature coefficient becomes slightly less than this particular value, and in simulation you'll be able to predict those things. Now, secondly, usually what happens is, as I mentioned, it is easier to realize a PNP transistor. Of course, NPN transistors are also realized. So a more practical version or a more common version that you would see is basically a PNP transistor like this. Okay. So if you look at most of the papers, you will see that you have a PNP transistor used for your diode. Okay. And some papers, they may just go and put a PN junction diode like this, but then the diode is typically implemented as a PNP transistor. Now let us also look at, so basically a PNP version is widely used. Now thirdly, what happens due to the offset of the op amp? Now suppose this, in this particular case, you have this two resistors, and let us say you have the diode. Right. Now suppose, so this is the minus terminal, this is the plus terminal. Now if there is an offset voltage in series with your positive terminal, right? Now what will happen to your band gap voltage? Now we all know that every op amp that you design and fabricate will have some random offset, right? So now what will happen is that we are, what is going to happen is, like, instead of saying that VBE1 is equal to VBE2 plus I times R3, what is going to happen is VBE1 minus V offset, because of the way in which I have put the polarity of the offset in this particular case, right? So this is your, it is VEB. Basically, let's just say, I mean, it is understood that it's the base emitter voltage, or right? So VBE1 minus the V offset is now going to be equal to VBE2 plus R3 into I. Now, this is the kind of thing that is going to happen, and therefore V out will be equal to what? VBE2 plus R3 plus R2 into VBE1 minus VBE2 minus V offset divided by R3. Okay. This is the way that it will basically be. In other words, VBE2 plus 1 plus R2 by R3 multiplied by Vt ln n minus V offset. Okay. Basically, what is happening here is that this offset voltage term is multiplied by this factor of 1 plus R2 by R3. Now, in the previous example, we took that R2 by R3 is 4, and therefore, now let us say if you have a 10 millivolt offset of your op amp, the final output voltage that you're going to get is going to have an extra or an error of 50 millivolt, right? Because of the multiplication of the offset voltage with this 1 plus R2 by R3 term. All right. So the offset of the op amp is a very serious thing, and many times what will happen is this offset itself can be a temperature dependent offset or a process dependent offset, right? So now if it's a temperature dependent offset, it actually kind of complicates things even further. Now basically there are a lot of topologies that have come, but typically many times what you do is you make sure you take a lot of effort to make sure that you reduce this offset as much as possible. Now, how can you reduce the offset of the op amp? The random offset of the op amp, how can you reduce the offset? Increase the area. Basically, you need to increase the area of the differential pair. Okay. So that's the most straightforward technique that is possible. You can do chopping and other things, but then it may lead to a lot of other artifacts. Okay. Now, although on paper this looks that it will be a very neat straight line, in practice, if you plot the VREF, if you simulate it and if you plot the VREF across temperature, you would expect a perfect straight line. Okay. But now what happens is that typically there will be a small curvature. Okay. Now you might have done this at, let's say, some T naught of, basically there will be this temperature coefficient will be exactly 0 at one particular temperature. The slope will be 0 at one particular temperature, and in other places there will be a little bit of curvature. Okay. Now, typically what happens is when you do band gap references, you see what is the temperature range, you measure it in terms of ppm. So basically in terms of ppm, what you do is delta V by delta T into 1 by multiplied by the nominal VREF multiplied by 10 to the power of 6. So this will give you the variation in terms of ppm per degree centigrade. Okay. So for example, if you are having 1.21 volt, and let us say it is varying from 1.205 to, let us say, 1.201. So basically, how much variation do you have? You are having around 5 millivolt variation. So you have a 5 millivolt variation across, let us say it is going from a temperature of 10 degrees, or let us say minus 10 degrees to, let's say, plus 100 degrees. Then you would say 5 millivolt divided by 110 degree multiplied by your reference voltage, which is 1.21 into 10 to the power of 6, will basically give you the accuracy of your band gap reference in terms of ppm per degree centigrade. Okay. And now in literature, you will see that there are a lot of techniques that people have tried to come up with to reduce this curvature. And also there is another problem, which is like, if you take, let us say you manufacture some 1,000 devices. Okay. Now, if you take those 1,000 devices and you measure the VREF, right? it will be like the point at which this T naught happens will be different. So you'll basically get curves like this. Okay. So there will be curvature, but the point at which the zero temperature coefficient actually happens will be different. Okay. So ultimately, basically what you do is you, I mean, if you look at most papers, they will plot a histogram, at least by doing a Monte Carlo simulation, that they'll say, okay, this is going to be the, if you take this one, let us say this is my expected VREF, and then you'll see a kind of a Gaussian curve. Okay? And so this will have, I mean, the mean value will be equal to VREF, and they will give a certain sigma also. All right. So you will see that, you know, that the VREF value will be pretty much the same, but the curvature point will the curvature will be basically a little different like this. And there are a lot of people who have come up with techniques to handle this curvature and, you know, and so on. Okay. All right. So now I said that this is something which is not very easy. I mean, although this is a, you know, it is basically, this particular topology is not very commonly used. The way that most commonly people use bandgap references, at least with older technology nodes, is basically instead of using so many resistors, people make a small modification, and let me give you the circuit. Okay, but before we go into it, let us look at PTAT current generation. Okay. Now, the same circuit, let's take the same core. The core kind of remains the same. We have two PNP transistors, which are diode connected, and you have, let us say, this is your R1. Okay. Now, basically, instead of connecting so many resistors, what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to put two PMOS current sources. Okay. All right. Now, if you, so this again, you can similarly look at the polarity. It will be that if this voltage is basically increasing, then you need to reduce the amount of current. And how will you reduce the current? By increasing this voltage, right? So therefore, this becomes the positive polarity, and this is the negative one. All right. So let us say this is A, and this is N times A. This is Q1, Q2. Let's say this is M3, M4. Now again, these two nodes X and Y are being made equal by means of this op amp. Okay, in the previous case, we had a resistor which is driving. Now, instead of having a resistor, this kind of a PMOS based current source thing, this is a more popular way of doing things. Now, if you do this, if X and Y are the same, now what is the voltage across this R1? We saw that this is going to be Vt natural logarithm of N, right? And therefore, what is the current that is flowing through this R1? It is basically Vt ln of N divided by R1. In other words, this is the current, let's say this is the current that is flowing in here. And then what is the nature of this current? This is basically a PTAT current. Okay. Now, when you have a, so basically what all that you need to do is that the current which is flowing through this branch, if you can just go and copy it, right? The current that is going to flow through this thing is also going to be a PTAT current. So PTAT current generation becomes very easy. You take the same bandgap core, and what you do here is you, I mean, instead of the resistor, you basically use a MOSFET. I mean, you drive, I mean, the op amp drives a MOSFET, pair of MOSFET current sources, M3 and M4 are going to be equal. And we realize that as long as X and Y are made equal, the current through R1 or the voltage across R1 is PTAT voltage, and therefore the current through R1 is also PTAT current. And therefore, if you mirror the current, you automatically get PTAT current. Okay. So this is how PTAT current generation happens. All right. Now, there is, I mean, this op amp is one way to do it. And here, what is of importance is M3 and M4, their mismatch also is critical. Okay, so whenever you design these PTAT current generation and PTAT sources or band gap sources, you run Monte Carlo simulation and you make sure that the variation because of the input of, I mean, the input offset of this op amp is minimized by increasing the area of the input transistors. And this M4 and M3 mismatch will also cause a similar kind of an error, right? And therefore, you go and increase the area of M3 and M4 also. All right. So PTAT current generation becomes easy. Another way to do it without kind of using an op amp is to kind of use that kind of a double diode connector transistor thing which we saw in yesterday's class, which we used for the constant GM bias. Basically, what you can do is that you can use the same kind of an arrangement, right? So in yesterday's class, we saw that this was grounded and here we had a resistor. But now what we will do is we will use a PNP transistor, the same core. This kind of acts as something which makes sure that the voltages are, so this is our X and this is our Y, this is A and this is N times A. And this current can be mirrored. And this will be basically also PTAT current. Okay. So typically, if you are having a larger voltage, I mean, if you're having a larger supply voltage, if you're especially in older technology nodes, you can afford to put a lot of transistors like this, stack it up. And in older technology nodes, it's possible to use this kind of a PTAT generation thing. But in more recent, I mean, deep submicron processes, it is, I mean, people typically end up using a core which is like this. All right. Now, using this PTAT current, like using a structure like this, how do we generate a band gap voltage? So band gap voltage generation is basically becomes quite simple. What you basically do is that you take the same PTAT core, right? And here, of course, you have your this thing. Plus and minus. Now, this core kind of is the same. Let's call this as R1. This is A and this is N times A. Let's say this is Q1, this is Q2, right? So this current, if you mirror, it becomes a PTAT current. Now, if you take this PTAT current and then you pump it through a transistor, through another resistor with another transistor Q3, call it R2. Now you can adjust R2 in such a way that you are basically getting a Vout, which is where the reference voltage is temperature independent. Now, how is this possible? Because the current that is flowing through here is a PTAT current, right? And therefore, how can you write this Vout? Vout can be written as VBE3, let's say mod of it because it's a PNP transistor, plus this VT. What is the current that is flowing here? The current that is flowing here, this voltage is VT ln of N. The current that is flowing here is VT ln of N divided by R1. The same current is mirrored here. And the voltage here is the voltage drop across R2 plus the VEB here. VEB3. Right? So this is nothing but VT ln of N divided by R1. The same current mirrored here multiplied by R2. Now, what is essential here is to make sure that this R2 by R1 into ln of N is basically equal to 17 point. Right? So, if you can make sure that this is possible, then your reference voltage is basically given by VBE3 mod plus R2 by R3, sorry, R2 by R1 multiplied by Vt ln of n. Okay. So now this voltage is basically a temperature, or rather zero temperature coefficient voltage. Okay. Of course, in practice, what will happen is this M3, M4, and M5 need to be matched accurately. As long as you can get to do that, basically this becomes a band gap voltage. Okay. Now this band gap voltage basically is quite essential, because if you talk about ADC design or digital to analog converters, all of them work with one golden reference, right? So if you talk about an ADC, so if you look at a very simple flash ADC, right? So if you have a resistor ladder, basically this all depends on this reference voltage that is given there, right? Now, similarly, even in a D2A converter, you need one golden reference, which does not change with supply voltage, which does not change with current, which does not change with temperature and with process, right? So, in all those cases, this is extremely important, all right? We will also see how we can do low voltage band gap references. We will do that in tomorrow's class. Any doubts, any questions?
We have generated here temperature independent voltages, but how do you generate process independent?
So this will also be okay. So when you talk about process, so what happens is here you are mirroring the current, so that is really not an issue. So even if the threshold voltage changes, this op amp is going to make sure that the voltage, I mean, this node X and Y are going to be the same, right? So no matter what your process corner is going to be, right? So as a result of that, the current that is going to flow through this is nothing but Vt ln n divided by R1. So the problem that you would basically face is R1 variation with process, right? Basically, you can say R1 and R2 variation with process, right? So now if you look at this particular expression, you have this, it's a ratioed quantity, R2 by R1. So in practice, what happens is, although the absolute values might change, ratios are usually well preserved, okay? But in practice, if you go to the industry, what they will do is they will have a calibration routine where they will have this R1 and R2 and all that will be tunable. Okay, so tunable meaning this R1 will be implemented as a parallel combination of multiple resistors with switches. Okay, so you will do a calibration routine first time. I mean, sometimes it is called as factory calibration. That is once and for all, you do it once and then you leave it. Okay, sometimes every time when you turn on, you calibrate. So that differs from, I mean, that's a choice that every design team will make. So nevertheless, what happens is, for example, if you're doing the calibration, so you will have an identical resistor which is kept and you will measure. So suppose you wanted a 1 kilo ohm resistor. You will compare it with an external reference, which will be a very precise resistor, which is put on the board, and you will find out what is this value of the resistor. So what will happen is all the resistances would have moved up or all the resistances would have moved down. Okay, so you will find out by how much you need to tweak this R1 such that it comes back to the value that you actually want. Okay, so this R1 and R2 will be basically tunable, digitally tunable. Basically, it will be like resistor. This will be the primary resistor, and then you'll have resistor with a MOS switch basically. Like you'll have a resistor bank like this. Okay, and based on the actual value that you're having, they will go and feed a certain code into this, such that the parallel combination of this entire resistor is going to be exactly what you want. Okay, or it can be a series combination also. The way it is implemented differs from project to project, but typically these things are trimmed. Okay, so many times what you will get is you'll have both an untrimmed band gap as well as a trimmed band gap. All right. So apart from that, anyway, the op amp will take care of all the other VT mismatches, I mean, VT variation, threshold voltage variations and all that will be taken care of, right? The only thing is the mismatch between the transistors. So that's a random mismatch, that's a random offset, which will result in this kind of a bell-shaped curve that you would get. Okay. Is it clear?
Sir, also like whenever we are talking about the circuit, we are kind of implementing it in a IC level like environment. So how do we, once we fabricate it, how do we change the R1 or R2?
That's all. So this R1 itself will be a digitally tunable resistor bank. So what I have drawn as R1 will actually be implemented as something like this. So let me say it's easier to think of it as a series tuned. Okay. So let us say this is a 1 kilo ohm resistor, for example. You wanted a 1 kilo ohm resistor. Now what you would do is, let us say this is a fixed resistance of 800 ohm. Okay. Now this 800 ohm can go up or down. All right. Now across all this, you will put switches, MOS switches. Okay. So like that, you will have a resistor bank. All right. So this can be a binary weighted set of resistors and so on. Right. Now this entire thing becomes your R1. Now what you will do is internally, I mean, you will have one current source. I mean, from the same thing you will take, basically you will have some switch arrangement where you will pin it out of the chip and you'll have a precise, let's say, R reference. This will be a precision resistor that you buy from outside, an SMD component which will be on the board. Okay. And you will measure this voltage. Okay. What is the Vref? And then you will open the switch and you'll bring this current to another identical resistor. Let us say you wanted this 800 ohm, the same 800 ohm resistor, you will connect it. So this is S1, S2, and you'll measure this PR, let's call it VR. Now this ratio of these two resistances will basically give you how much has this resistance changed, right? For example, even if your output outside reference is basically, let us say 800 ohms, all right, you should have Vref by VR should be equal to 1, but it will not be equal to 1. It will be slightly greater than 1 or lesser than 1. Now, by looking at this ratio, you will know by how much this actual resistance has changed. For example, if this ratio is, let us say, less than 1, all right, let us say it is equal to 0.9, okay, which means what? That your resistance instead of being 800 ohm is some 10% higher. All right. Now you will have a kind of a, I mean, most of these SOCs will already have some digital circuits inside. So you'll have what is called as a calibration engine. You'll have some small, logic processor which is put there, which will basically go and set what should be, which of the bits should be turned on. Let us say this is B0, B1 all the way to BN. Okay. So it will set a certain code for this. Okay. So now once you apply this code, what will happen is it will be 800 plus, let us say some, certain things will be on, certain things will be off. So the total resistance here will be equal to 1 kilo ohm. You understood? So this is what is called as a calibration routine or a calibration procedure. Okay. Sometimes what they will do is they will do what is called as a factory calibration. So it is like once and for all, one time for the lifetime of the chip. You do the calibration, you write the code, you kind of burn it into an EEPROM inside the chip, and then you leave it. Or what will happen is, like every time you turn on the chip, it will run this calibration routine and it will set the code and it will use it. You understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is how they will do in order to, so this calibration usually for bandgap sources, it is routinely done. Of course, sometimes you will make use of the untrimmed bandgap also, but you will also have a trimmed bandgap. Okay. Okay, so this maybe. Sorry, can you repeat?
Does the noise matter here? Flicker noise kind of thing.
Yes, yes. There is a noise analysis that people do on as well. Yes, flicker noise is a part and parcel of this. We'll see if maybe in tomorrow's class we can take a little bit look at the, I mean, look at the noise also. Yeah, flicker noise anyway, because you try to increase the area of all these devices, it will go down, but it is there. It's part and parcel. You cannot escape noise. Okay. Any other questions, doubts?
No, sir.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.